All right, so get ready to dive into some serious history today as we explore, you guessed it, Lithuanian castles.
Castles.
Castles. And we've got this amazing article from Brat Guides. These guys are like the travel experts.
Oh, yeah, they're really great.
And what's cool is it's not just like your typical travel guide stuff. It's like packed with all this cool history and background on these castles.
Yeah, you know what's fascinating is just how many castles there are in Lithuania, a country often called the land of castles.
Right. It's like you wouldn't think a place that's not exactly massive would have so many castles.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, like, why so many castles?
Right. And they're not just all the same either. We're talking Gothic, Renaissance, Baroque, like a real mix of styles.
Yeah, it really is like an architectural tapestry reflecting different periods of history.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like there's way more to these castles than just pretty pictures.
Oh, for sure. Each style represents a different chapter in Lithuania's history, and it's a history that was often marked by conflict and power struggles.
Yeah. So imagine you're like way back in time, like way back to the Bronze Age. You got these wooden hill forts up on these strategic hills, trying to keep those invaders out.
I can just picture it.
Sadly, none of the original structures remain, but you can still visit the sites where they once stood. Like Kernava, for example, a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. A really special place.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. You're just standing there, and it's like you can almost feel the presence of those ancient defenses. Like just imagine the stories those hills could tell.
Absolutely. Those hills have seen a lot of history.
Yeah, so from those ancient beginnings,
Yeah.
we then move into like the medieval period where you start seeing these brick castles popping up everywhere.
Right. And they weren't just placed randomly either. There was a real strategic thinking behind it.
Oh, yeah. They were placed along rivers, near those vital trade routes, and of course, around the political heartland, forming a defensive network. I mean, it just shows you how strategically important these castles were. They were a key part of Lithuania's survival.
Right. Because remember, they had enemies like the Teutonic Knights breathing down their necks.
Yeah.
A powerful force they were.
Oh, yeah, these guys, these Teutonic Knights were like constantly trying to push in from the west. I mean, they were relentless.
Absolutely. And Lithuania had to be smart, had to fortify itself. And these castles played a crucial role in that fight.
Yeah, they were like literally on the front lines.
Right. These castles were more than just about aesthetics. We're talking about power, control, and survival. They were sending a message. We're here to stay.
It was like a giant game of chess, with these castles as the key pieces.
Yeah, great analogy.
The article also mentions these walled cities, although sadly most of them were destroyed in the 19th century.
Oh, wow. That's such a shame.
I know. It makes you wonder what it must have been like to live inside those walls, though, right? Like a whole bustling city protected by these imposing fortifications.
Yeah, I can just imagine it, that sense of community and security and also vulnerability all at the same time.
Totally, like you're safe within the walls, but outside, who knows what dangers lurk?
Exactly. Those walls must have held so many stories.
For sure. And then as we move into like the Renaissance and Baroque periods, we see things start to change. The castles start to get rebuilt. They're not just purely defensive structures anymore. They become more like elegant residences. They're starting to reflect new artistic ideas and influences.
Right, and you see the influence of powerful families like the Radziwills really start to emerge.
Oh yeah, the Radziwills, they were huge patrons of the arts, right?
Yeah, they played a major role in shaping the cultural landscape of Lithuania.
And you can really see their influence in these castles. Like
Yeah.
it's like this blend of old and new, like a fusion of history and art.
Yeah, and it's what makes exploring these Lithuanian castles so fascinating. You're not just looking at buildings, you're peeling back layers of history and uncovering stories of power, ambition, and cultural evolution.
It's like each castle has its own story to tell,
Yeah.
its own personality, its own secret.
Yeah, and it's up to us to uncover them.
It's exactly. Okay, so we've talked a bit about the general context and the different periods. Now let's dive into some of these standout castles, the ones that just really jump out at you.
Sounds good.
I'm ready.
I mean, you got to start with Trakai Island Castle, right?
Yeah.
It's like the poster child for Lithuanian castles.
Oh, absolutely. Trga is truly iconic.
I mean, seriously, picture this. A stunning castle rising out of the waters of Lake Galvo. It's like something out of a fairy tale.
Yeah, it's breathtaking.
But it's got like this serious history behind it. It was built by Grand Duke Kęstutis. He was like this key figure in Lithuania's fight for independence against those pesky Teutonic Knights.
Oh, yeah, Kęstutis, he was a brilliant military strategist,
It sure was, and he understood the importance of a good defense.
which is clear from the castle's location, right?
Yeah.
An island smack dab in the middle of a lake. Talk about a natural barrier.
Yeah, not an easy place to attack, that's for sure. And then his son, Vitalis the Great, he finished the castle and really took it to the next level.
Ah, yes, Vytautas the Great, what a leader.
Right. Under his rule, Trakai became more than just a fortress. It became a symbol of Lithuania's power.
And a center of diplomacy, too, right?
Yeah, Vitalis was all about expanding Lithuania's territory and influence. And Trakai was like his showcase.
It's really reflected in the castle's architecture, too. You can see these influences from Gothic and Eastern European styles.
Yeah, it's like a blend of different architectural traditions reflecting Vitalis' vision for Lithuania as this like major player on the European stage.
Yeah.
He was all about making a statement.
Yeah, he wanted the world to know that Lithuania had arrived.
Yeah, exactly. So, Trakai Island Castle, it's not just a pretty picture. It's a symbol of ambition, survival, and a leader who wasn't afraid to take on the big guys.
A true underdog story.
Totally. And speaking of power, we got to talk about Vilnius Castle Complex. Now, this was a complex of 3 castles, each with its own role to play.
3 castles, wow.
Yeah, yeah, the upper castle, home to that iconic Gediminas Tower.
Oh, yeah, that's the one you see in old pictures.
Exactly. Offering that incredible view of the city, like it's surveying its domain.
It's almost like a symbol of the Grand Duke's authority.
Right. It's like saying, we're in charge here. And then there was the lower castle, which was the heart of the Grand Duchy for centuries.
I mean, can you imagine all the political intrigue that must have gone on within those walls? The decisions that were made, the history that unfolded.
Yeah, it's like you can almost feel the echoes of those who walked those halls before you. The Grand Dukes, the nobles, the ambassadors, they were all shaping the destiny of Lithuania.
And even though the Cricket Castle was destroyed, those remaining structures still give you a sense of Vilnius's power.
Yeah, it was like a tangible link to the past,
Yeah.
you know, like a reminder of the city's enduring legacy.
You know, it really hits home that these castles weren't just about military might. They were also centers of political life and cultural exchange.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like they were the heart and soul of Lithuania.
You know, thinking about all these stories makes me want to hop on a plane to Lithuania right now and see these castles for myself.
Me too. Okay, so we've talked about Trakai and Vilnius. Now we got to mention Medininkai Castle.
Ah, yes, Medinki. I've heard great things.
So this one is special, not just for its history, but for what it represents today. You see, it's home to the annual Medininkai Castle Games. And let me tell you, this is an event that brings the medieval period to life.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Okay, so picture this. Knights in full armor, clashing swords, ancient music filling the air, craftsmen demonstrating their skills. You literally feel like you've stepped back in time.
You're making me want to go even more now. It's incredible how Lithuania has managed to preserve its heritage and make it accessible to everyone like that.
It's not just about preserving it, though. It's about making it come alive,
Mhm.
making those connections to the past tangible and exciting. It's like those castle walls are whispering stories, inviting you to step into their world.
It reminds you that history isn't just something you read about in a book. It's alive and waiting to be experienced.
Exactly, and I think that's what makes these Lithuanian castles so captivating. They're not just static structures, they're gateways to the past.
They're inviting us to explore, learn, and connect with the stories they have to tell.
And trust me, they have a lot of stories to tell.
I can't wait to hear more.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think about it. These castles have been standing for centuries.
I know, right?
They've seen so much change, wars, invasions, you name it.
Silent witnesses to history.
Yeah, and yet they're still here, still standing strong.
It really speaks to Lithuania's resilience, doesn't it? I mean, they were this powerful Grand Duchy for centuries, controlling vast territory.
Right, a major force in the region.
But their location, it was both a blessing and a curse. I mean, they were at the crossroads of Europe.
Yeah, like a prime piece of real estate.
Exactly. Which made them a constant target for their neighbors. It's
Yep.
like they were constantly having to defend themselves.
It must have felt like being in the middle of this giant game of Risk, right? Everyone wants a piece of your land.
Exactly. You've got the Teutonic Knights pushing in from the west. These guys were a force to be reckoned with, driven by religious zeal and territorial ambition.
Oh, yeah, we talked about them earlier. They were relentless.
And then you had this rising power from the east, the Grand Duchy of Moscow, also looking to expand its influence.
So Lithuania was constantly caught between these two powerful forces. Talk about a tough spot.
It was a delicate balancing act, and they had to be really smart about their defense.
That's where the castles come in, right? They were essential to their survival.
Absolutely. It wasn't just about power or prestige, it was about survival.
Like we were saying before with Trakai Island Castle, that strategic location was no accident. It was all about creating those natural barriers.
And it wasn't just about location either. The way these castles were designed, the architecture, it all played a crucial role in their defense.
Yeah, they were built to withstand sieges,
Yeah.
thick walls, towers, moats, you name it.
Yeah, they had to think ahead, anticipate those potential threats.
It really makes you appreciate the skill and ingenuity of the people who built them.
I know, right? They didn't have modern technology or heavy machinery. It was all about manpower and know-how.
Talk about impressive.
Take Conus Castle, for example. It was instrumental in the Battle of Grunwald in 1410.
Ah, yes, Grunwald, a turning point in history, right?
A major battle. Lithuania, allied with Poland, faced off against the Teutonic Knights, and they won.
A decisive victory that really shifted the balance of power in the region, right?
Exactly. And Conus Castle was right in the thick of it.
Its location on the Nemunas River, perfect strategic spot.
And its defenses really helped to repel the Teutonic Knights.
Wow, and today you can still see evidence of that battle, right?
Oh yeah, you can see the scars, the damage inflicted by cannons and siege weapons.
It's like those walls are telling stories of bravery and sacrifice.
Absolutely, those castles have seen a lot of action.
Speaking of stories, we have to talk about Vytautas the Great. I mean, what a figure in Lithuanian history.
Oh, he was incredible. So ambitious, a great military leader, but also a shrewd diplomat.
He really expanded Lithuania's territory, right?
Yeah, his reign is considered a golden age.
And you can see his vision reflected in the castles. They start to become more than just defensive structures.
Exactly. They're starting to incorporate Renaissance architecture. They're becoming more refined, more elegant.
It's like you're seeing the evolution of Lithuania's identity in these castles, you know?
From purely military structures to these expressions of national pride and cultural sophistication.
Yeah, and that evolution continues even after Vytautas, right? As Lithuania's political landscape changes, so do the castles.
Some get expanded, others repurposed, some sadly destroyed.
It's a reminder that these castles aren't frozen in time. They're living, breathing entities that continue to evolve along with the nation.
And they're a testament to Lithuania's ability to adapt and overcome challenges.
It's like they're telling us to remember them, remember the stories they hold.
Yeah, to learn from the past and use that knowledge to build a better future.
I love that. Okay, so we've covered some of the broader historical context. Now I want to dive into some specific castles and what makes them so unique.
I'm all ears.
Each one has its own charm, its own tale to tell, and I can't wait to explore them in more detail.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've talked about a bunch of these Lithuanian castles, their history, their strategic importance, all that good stuff. Now I want to zoom in, look at some specific castles that really caught my eye.
Sounds good to me. Which ones are you thinking of?
Well, let's start with Trakai Island Castle again. We talked about its beauty, the location, all that, but what really fascinates me is that it was brought back to life. You know?
Yeah, in the mid-20th century, they did this huge restoration project. They basically rebuilt it.
It's amazing they managed to piece it all back together. Imagine all those historical records, archaeological findings, all coming together.
It was meticulous work, for sure. And they used traditional building techniques, too, so it's as authentic as it gets.
That's so cool. So today, you can walk through these halls, visit the museum. It's like stepping back in time, you know?
Oh, absolutely. It's like you're transported back to the time of Grand Dukes and all that.
I bet the views from the towers are incredible, too.
Oh, they're breathtaking. Panoramic views of the lake and the surrounding countryside. You can see why they chose that location, right?
Yeah, strategic and beautiful, the best of both worlds.
And it's not just a static museum either. They have all sorts of events throughout the year, arts and crafts, music festivals, even medieval reenactments.
No way. That's so cool. It's like history comes alive there.
It really does. It's a great way to experience the past.
Okay, so let's move on to Vilnius Castle Complex. 3 castles, each with its own unique story, but sadly the Cricket Castle is gone.
Yeah, what a shame. But we still have the upper castle and the lower castle.
Right, and the upper castle with that iconic Gediminas Tower is a must-see. Right?
Oh, yeah. It's like a symbol of Vilnius. You can't miss it.
You can climb to the top and get these amazing panoramic views of the city.
It's like you're looking out over centuries of history.
I bet you can almost feel the presence of all those who stood there before you. You know, the Grand Dukes, the guards, everyone.
And then there's the lower castle, which was like the heart of the Grand Duchy for so long.
Yeah, now it houses the National Museum of Lithuania.
It's a great place to learn about the country's history and culture, from ancient times to the present day.
So we've got these castles. They play key roles in defense. They've been centers of power. But then you have castles like Roddenberry's Castle, also known as the Red Manor.
Yeah, it has a really interesting story. It started as a Teutonic stronghold, but then it became this luxurious Renaissance manor owned by the Radziwill family.
Right, and it had this amazing art collection, right? But sadly, most of it was lost during World War II.
Yeah, that's one of the downsides of history. Sometimes these beautiful things are lost to conflict or just the passage of time.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we need to protect our cultural heritage.
Absolutely. But even though the art collection is gone, the castle itself has been beautifully restored. Now it houses a museum dedicated to the Tizgievich family who owned it later on.
Oh, wow. So you can learn about their lives and their contributions to Lithuanian culture.
Exactly. It's a fascinating glimpse into the aristocratic life of that time.
Okay, two more that I want to touch on. First, Raudonon Castle, the one with the mixed architectural styles.
Ah, yes, Raudenow. It was even repurposed as a school in the 1960s.
A school in a castle. That's so cool.
Can you imagine going to school in a castle? That would be amazing.
Talk about an unforgettable learning experience. Okay, and finally we have Birjai Castle, which also houses a museum, right?
Yes, the Birjai Regional Museum Sala. It's focused on the region's local history and culture.
So you can learn about the tribes who lived in the area, their traditions, and the Radziwill family's influence.
Oh, and they have exhibits about the region's brewing traditions, too. Did you know that Birjai was known for its beer?
No way. That's awesome. I love learning these little details.
Well, you know what they say. Every castle has a story.
They really do. And I think that's what makes them so fascinating. It's not just the architecture or the history, it's the stories they tell, the lives that unfolded within their walls.
They offer a glimpse into the past, and they also challenge us to think about the future.
Yeah, like what can we learn from these castles? How can we apply those lessons to our own lives?
It's a question worth pondering.
It really is. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into Lithuanian castles. Huge thanks to Brat Guides for this amazing article. I learned so much, and I hope you did too.
It was my pleasure. I always love exploring history, and these castles have so much to offer.
They really do. And for our listeners, if any of these castles caught your attention, I encourage you to do some more research, maybe even plan a trip to Lithuania someday.
You won't regret it.
All right, until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep discovering those hidden gems of history.
Cheers to that.